So you've got your data, and finally it has come time to lay it to rest. But how do you do that securely? Well, we're going to talk about that starting right now.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Welcome back to Security Plus here at IT Pro TV. Today is all about secure data destruction. You think, oh yeah, this data destruction, that's easy. You just delete the thing and empty your recycling bin, right? And all's good. Well, I wish it were that simple, and unfortunately, that's not the case. And Wes is going to show us some great ways in which we can securely rid ourselves of old data without getting exposed in any way, shape, or form. Wes, let's start with probably, well, the most tactile type of data, which would be hard coded, right? We still print stuff, don't we?
That's absolutely correct. If you think about it, we have data retention periods, and sometimes we still need to keep paper documents around, believe it or not, analog, right? In a digital world.
What's a paper?
That's right. So, if you ever see an answer on the exam that says, yeah, just send things to the recycle bin, right click and delete, if that made you laugh, chances are it's probably not the right answer. So don't do that for sure. So let's go ahead and let's talk about, well, how do we get rid of some of that old data that's maybe printed out, right? And one of the easiest ways to do this is things like paper documentation, and that is the whole burning things, right? Now, it seems like that might be like we're being facetious, but we are not. That is a great way to get rid of all of the information. So this episode here, you've probably seen a lot of these techniques, but realize that there are, I should say, to try better English,
Yeah.
there are things that we have to do to make sure that things like customer data itself, proprietary information, if you will, doesn't end up in the wrong hands. And especially in today's day and age, where not only do we have long-standing compliance requirements, PII, FIPS, if you will, things like PCI, but remember we've got GDPR, and just a single violation could cause your company millions of dollars and really put you out of business. So even though it seems kind of simplistic, it is still something that you need to be aware of, and certainly need to be aware of for the exam.
Yeah, my philosophy on destroying data securely is go paranoid, right? I want to make
Yes.
sure no one can even rifle through the ash and try to read a page. Who knows what it is? I want to take that ash, I want to grind that up, and then throw it off a cliff somewhere. So that's what we can do. Let's keep going with the idea with that paper, though, because paper, maybe you don't have an incinerator to throw it in, but there are some great off-the-shelf mechanisms for getting rid of paper documents, like shredding, right?
Absolutely. And there are some things that we need to be aware of when we talk about shredders. All right. Now, we are not talking about a villain trying to take out 4 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles here. But what we are talking about is a mechanism that does exactly what it looks like here. And that is basically shredding your documents. Now, keep in mind that there are a couple of security levels that I want you to be aware of for the exam, believe it or not. And just be mindful of them. And when we talk about security levels, we're talking about how finely does it actually shred your documentation. And those levels range from P2 to P6, if you will, but I'm not really worried about some of the earlier, the lower levels. Let's talk about the very first one, the designation that you'll find on these. P4, right? That just means commercial level. And again, all it defines is how small these pieces are. They're typically cross-cut, all right? And then how small are the pieces themselves when they come out of that shredder. Commercial level, you're starting at around P4, if you will. But then we have to go a little bit higher levels, if you will, if you want to get them even smaller than that. P5 is what they call espionage proof, and it's something that you actually see in the European nations as well. And then we have what is known as P6, and P6 is where we start getting into the DoD and NSA and military, and we're talking just fraction millimeters, if you will.
This is confetti.
That's exactly it. And it sounds like it sounds like a joke, but if somebody really wants to try to take the time to rebuild information and your data's worth doing that, just think of it as a 4,000 piece puzzle, right? And it's taking its time to put it back together, right? And that's what these just ensure that you can't do, right? If you couple the shredding with the burning, then you've really taken, like Dan says, go paranoid or go home, right?
Right.
In fact, Dan, we've been talking about this over the last few weeks of doing this series, and I know you're getting ready to work on another security series, and that's that concept of zero trust, right? Don't trust that it's taken care of. Make sure that you follow these security levels as well. Just in general, be aware that there are different security levels, and it really just boils down to how finely they shred the documents.
Yeah, they should come up with P7, where it's a 4,000 piece puzzle made of your data, which is each piece is made up of 4,000 pieces. So that could be fun for someone to try to put back together. That's just a hateful move right there. So, hey, but that's what this is all about, making sure that that data stays secure and out of the hands of people you don't want them to see. Now, this next method, I really like this because this is not only doable, but is really effective. And that's the idea of pulping the paper, right?
Sure, it's the same concept as recycling, you know, right? When we talk about recycling paper, we're literally talking about essentially reducing the documents down to a paper slurry. And if you've ever seen, like, maybe go out there on YouTube when they're actually making paper, that's what you're doing. You're reducing it down to its original state, if you will, prior to it being actually a document here. Again, that's all it really is. It's the same process of recycling, and if you haven't heard about it before, now you have. Just understand that we're still talking about the old analog, if you will. We're still talking about paper documents here.
All right, Wes, we've killed enough trees for the day. Let's move on away from paper documents, hard documents, although they are very important for us to make sure that we destroy securely. The real meat on this bone is going to be digital data, right? How do we take those ones and zeros that are on a hard drive or wherever they may reside and turn them into nothingness so that no one can read them?
Sure. So let's take that concept that you started out with, Dan. One of the things that Dan mentioned, and Dan knows very well that we don't just right-click on something and delete it, right? And why is that? Well, because at the operating system level, all we did is remove the pointers that the operating system finds the information within your physical media. All right, so we have to take it a little bit farther, all right? And that's where something like overwriting comes in. What are you doing? Essentially, you're just writing new data over deleted information, all right? And that's to ensure that the data cannot be recovered or bring it to an acceptable level, right? It all depends on how valuable your data is and how badly somebody wants to get to it. And that's important to understand that there are different, this is called another part of what's called data sanitization, right? I guess data sanitization would be the overarching term. Overwriting would be the way that we can do that, all right? And I just want to make you aware of a standard that's out there. If you've never heard of it, look into this a little bit. Let's do some homework here. DoD 5220.22. All right. All it really means is that is the Department of Defense's overriding standard to saying that in a lab environment, your data should be unrecoverable. All right. And really what it means is 3 passes. You can see some overwriting software that goes up to 7 passes. Now, let me just make you aware that when you do this, you would say 3 passes, that can't take that long. Well, if you've got a petabyte of data, that might take a week or more, right? And then if you add additional passes over that. So what do I mean by a pass, right? I've kind of thrown that term out there, but really haven't defined what I mean by that. So in this military or Department of Defense standard, what happens is the first pass essentially is overwriting all of the locations on the media with zeros. The second pass kind of reverses that and overwrites all of those areas, if you will, with binary ones, right? So we're just basically stacking new data on top of old data. And then the third pass is overwriting all addressable locations, if you will, with a random bit pattern. That final little stack on top of the old information. And then the fourth is not really a pass. That's just verifying all the prior, that the final overwrite pass actually performed the way it was supposed to. So that's essentially overwriting. Just think about it as stacking new data on the older data so that the older data itself is hopefully unrecoverable.
Yeah, I always think of it as if you ever wrote something on like a legal pad with a pen, and you think, oh, I don't want anybody to see that's my account number or something like that. So you kind of scribble one way, then you scribble the other way, then you scribble this way, make circles, then make opposite circles. You're writing over the top of that so nothing can see it. That's how I always think of that as a good mnemonic for that. Let's move on to, if you've never done this or if you've never seen it work, you haven't lived. You've got to check this out. And it's the idea of pulverizing, really destroying the physical media that the data resides on, right?
That's exactly it. It's one of the best ways that you can actually get rid of the information.
And it's cathartic.
Oh, it really is. It's medicinal, I swear. And that's the idea of media destruction, okay? And to give you an example, there are companies that do this, that you can even watch them, and like Dan said, I would encourage you to go out to YouTube and look at some videos where they're literally just dumping on a conveyor belt hundreds, if not thousands, of hard drives, solid-state drives, RAM, if you will, and just just right into this big machine that basically chews it up down into smaller pieces. Sometimes it can go as far as like postage stamp size pieces, right? So you can see the collection bin as a result of that. And that's really what it boils down to. Now, it's not just hard drives. It could be things like, even though I know they're starting to go the way of the dodo bird, people still have optical drives, right? They're not using them as much as they are solid state media today. But all of this type of media essentially is just destroyed, so that the goal is that the information is unreadable. Now, when it comes to pulverizing, you could just say, hey, we could just do basic data destruction. There's been many a times that I've taken a series of hard drives and I've undone the screws on them and literally taken the platters out. And like, for instance, be careful doing this in laptops. The platters are glass. And you hit them with a hammer and they shatter just like a piece of glass would. So just be very, very careful when you do that. I've also heard of law enforcement taking them out and using for target practice at the range. It's here in Florida, a sheriff's department, if you will, used to, that's how they would do it. And again, I'd like to do that myself. Again, very medicinal, but pulverizing is just media destruction when it comes down to it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I've actually done some manual media destruction myself. Had this big, it was like a wedge.
Sure.
And you pull down on it with like a hydraulic press.
Yeah.
And it would just start cutting these things in half. So that was a lot of fun. Or you just take a good old 2-pound beater and just go to work on that thing, destroy it, have a good time doing that. Now, if you've been around computers for a while or any kind of technology, they usually tell you keep the magnets away from these things, because a lot of the way data works is through magnetization. So a process called degaussing could be the way you want to go if you don't actually want to physically destroy the media. You just want to get that data off there, right, Wes?
They do that, yeah, absolutely, and they do that for recycling. Sometimes you can have computer components that can be recycled if they're recycled within the company and stuff, and that's where degaussing comes in. Basically, it's just like Dan said, it's called strong magnets, essentially. And they have devices like such as this one right here that will actually allow you to feed in drives, and the more drives you can feed in at one time, typically the more expensive these devices get. And they can be tens of thousands of dollars, and you can have a machine like this that actually degausses them for you. And again, the goal here is to completely scramble all of the information, where the overwriter is a piece of software that actually overwrites the information. What we're saying is, no, use the magnets to take the magnetic media within it and completely just scramble the information. Again, the goal is so that it can become unrecoverable. And again, typically these devices are commercial grade, and again, they're very, very expensive.
It's super fun though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Keep all your electronic devices away from that thing. It will destroy them. You just got to keep that in mind. It's kind of like an MRI for your electronic devices, except instead of finding cancer or whatever, it destroys data. So just keep that in mind. Now we're back full circle from where we started, where we were burning paper. Well, guess what? Let's burn some drives, right? Let's stick them in a big fire and watch it melt.
Yeah, this is another one that can be fun and very, very dangerous as well. When we talk about incineration, it's the complete destruction of all of the media's components, and it really boils down to something like this. What are we doing? We're liquefying the components within it. And again, that is pretty much the ultimate, I guess I would say the ultimate way to ensure that your data cannot be recovered, because even the components that hold the data can't be recovered anymore. So that essentially is incineration. Now, I will tell you that all of these services that we've looked here, right, you could do them in-house. Now, I don't know about the incineration part, unless you got some tannerite in the back. But you can also sub these out, if you will, to a third-party service, and a third-party service can give you some kind of service contract, and they usually are licensed, bonded, and insured, and they give you some kind of form that says a certificate of destruction, essentially, that says, hey, we have destroyed your information, and now if your information gets out, we're going to be the ones, according to the contract and the service that you've paid us a fee for, we'll be the ones that take on that responsibility and that liability if your data gets into the hands of maybe the people that you don't want it to get into the hands of.
Well, Wes, Certificate of Destruction sounds like a great thrash metal song, but I would want one if I had used one of those services, because you got to be able to prove to a judge that you did everything you could do to properly dispose of data. So if there was a breach, you would want to make sure you could provide such certificate. Well, Wes, there we go. We've gone through a lot of stuff. Is there anything else? I mean, we've gone through quite a few different ways in which we could destroy data. Any other things you can think of?
Sure,
that would help
Dan.
us out?
I mentioned right there at the end, hey, there are third-party services that can do this. What do you
Yeah.
say we go ahead and kind of give you an idea of something, and actually somebody,
Yeah.
if somebody's never seen this, if you're not in IT and you haven't had to recycle these components in a large scale, then maybe you're not aware of this, and maybe you are. So let me show you here. So this is Guardian Data Destruction. And again, it's just one that I happen to pick because they pretty much, you can see, they do a lot here, and they go even farther. You can see the on-site shredding of tape drives and stuff, but even more so, let me forward this. I really like this. Data center decommissioning. When you have to bring an entire data center down, they're the ones that you can call and you can outsource that. And again, that's about making sure that that information doesn't end up in the wrong hands. And to kind of give you an idea of some of their services, they have a data destruction service. They also do this on site if you needed the shredding, if you will, too. And you can see some of the different things they do. On-site shredding for hard drives, tape drives, solid state drives, erasers, right, for the degaussing, if you will, overwriters. Actually, that one right there, eraser, is probably more of a software-based solution because they do have an on-site degausser as well, too. So this gives you an example of when I say third party, right, you can actually kind of outsource this to another company. And again, you pay them a fee and they give you a certificate of destruction. Again, they assume that liability based on, whatever you've paid them. So it kind of gives you a little bit of an example. And I would encourage you to go out to the internet and just kind of type in data destruction service, if you will, and you'll find plenty of these out here. We're not making any money or endorsing them, if you will, but you can see right here that they've got pretty much the whole entire run-of-the-mill on the concepts that we've talked about in this episode.
I'm going to call Guardian and see if I can't get a sponsorship deal with them. But there you go. Plenty of ways in which you can safely and securely destroy old data. Put it to rest in a way that it cannot be recovered. And that's what it's all about. You'd hate to see your data wind up on a paste bin site somewhere just because you just threw a drive in the garbage and someone fished it out, right? So that's what we're trying to do for here. And that's what you need to know for the Security Plus exam. And we are out of time for this episode, but there's more in the Security Plus series. So you want to come back for that. Until then, have a great day.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.